presented by GhostBed.com. Yeah, welcome to Drinkin, bros, kids. It's chilly.
Sound like you just took a money shot there.
It's chilly, Dan. It's why. I came from 75 on the beach to 21.
You were 21 maybe 30 years ago, if that's what you're saying.
Yeah. 21 degrees.
On Yellowstone last night, they were debating whether or not chili has beans.
Okay. It does, but it shouldn't.
I don't care, man. If it fucking tastes good, why the fuck are people purist about stupid shit like that?
Look, people love their chili. We've had a chili cook-off before. We know people love their chili. No, but the weather has gotten chilly. I feel like I got sick again just from changing 50 degrees overnight, or I'm just dying in general.
I think it's just your body protecting your lungs using mucus. It's insulating you.
Great.
That's how it works.
Great. Love to hear that. We got special guest Joe Kent back on the show today. Welcome, Joe. You've been here before, and you're back again. This time you're running for Congress.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
absolutely. What made you want to run for Congress?
Well, just pretty much the state of affairs in 2020 that didn't improve at all, and 2021 kind of heightened my resolve. So, I mean, really the thing that triggered me to run for this particular seat was the Republican representative in my district voting for the impeachment of President Trump. But that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. She had a pretty abysmal record up to that point. So that vote there for impeachment just sort of put her in play. I had intentions of going back and working in a second Trump administration. Obviously, the election went the way that it did, so that didn't work out. When she cast that impeachment vote, I felt that we were on the cusp of losing our country. I still think we're on that cusp right now. I think 22 is going to be the year that we either get it together and have a fighting chance, or we head to a pretty dark place.
What do you mean when you say lose the country? What is that? What does losing the country look like for you?
For me, I would say it is the totalitarian takeover of not just like the Democrats. I think this is far bigger than the left versus the right, Republicans versus the Democrats. This is essentially a permanent, unelected ruling class that uses somewhat elected officials as their puppets. And really, they just work for corporate overlords, whether that's the tech oligarchs or big pharma, military industrial complex, those types of people, Wall Street, BlackRock, et cetera. And we've really seen a lot of those consolidate their power and their grip over America with the COVID crisis.
Right. Yeah. What do you do? I mean, there's 438 Congress people right now. There might be more next year because of the census and all that bullshit. Mm-hmm. They usually add seats, but 440 people in Congress. That's a lot of people. I mean, it's not that many, but it's a lot. And it's a group that's self-regulating, right? Like, unless you commit a crime, a literal crime, there's no real recourse except for maybe being stripped of committees and shit. But the collective body votes for their own rules, and they vote for their own pay and salary. Like, Pelosi's talking about how I'm shocked to hear her say that she's in favor of people in Congress being able to buy and sell stocks.
Crazy, right?
I mean, that's wild.
Yeah.
I would never have expected that from her.
No. Who would want to get rich off of being in power?
Right, but what's the plan there exactly? Like, people ask me all the time when are more people going to run for office and stuff like that, and I know I'm a bit of a cynic about it, but I wonder from your perspective, what does victory look like, right? I mean, is it getting to Congress with enough people to overturn some of the stuff using votes, or is it something else? What is it from your perspective?
So I think it's very simple for right now. At 23, if we take back power, we have 2 more years of the Biden administration. And so our job right now, they have a majority. They don't have a supermajority, but they have a majority of the executive branch, the legislative branch. And they've kind of been able to drive us off a cliff, literally in about 10, 11 months they've been in power. Our job when we take back power is to be the opposition party that kills their agenda and stops it dead in its tracks. So even if that requires shutting down the government, we have to look at the Build Back Better bill, increases to the debt ceiling, all those things that just happened. They didn't have to happen. They happened because Republicans caved. The only reason Build Back Better got killed off is because Joe Manchin, a Democrat, actually had the resolve to reflect the desires of his constituents and not fold like 13 of the Republicans did. So really for me, it's obstruct their agenda, not allow one more thing from the Biden agenda to advance. file impeachment charges for Joe Biden on day one, and then conduct rigorous oversight. So Congress does have the ability to conduct a good deal of oversight. I think critical places we need to have that oversight are obviously in the election of 2020. You have 41% of Democrats right now think that there was problems with the last election. The Republican Party is like 75%. We're losing faith in all of our institutions, but our most fundamental one, election integrity and election security, is key. So having an oversight committee hearing on the election of 2020, I think, is key. COVID-19, we've been lied to since day one of COVID. We've had the largest transfer of wealth because of COVID from the working class, the middle class, and small businesses to, again, this permanent ruling class of oligarchs. And we've been lied to from day one. Guys like Fauci, the NIH, they knew what the truth was and they hid it from us. And they took a bunch of different authorities and they used them and weaponized them against the American people. We have to hold Fauci accountable. We have to show the American people exactly what happened. Feel the same way about Russiagate, about January 6th, about all these different things we've been lied to. The war on terror, the Afghanistan debacle. We saw 20 years of lies come unraveling, leaving Americans on the battlefield, 13 getting killed on the way out. There needs to be accountability. So oversight is a key thing that we can execute with just a handful of members in a small majority when we take back the House and Senate in 23. After that, that's going to create enough space and give us enough ability to show the American people what's going on. It's going to give us momentum to take back the White House in 24.
Right. Well, look, there's no way that Biden's going to get reelected. That's not a possibility. So you got to wonder who from that side is going to, and it's not going to be Vice President Harris either. She's pretty ubiquitously unliked by everybody.
Yeah, and I want to go back to something you said earlier, and I apologize, Dan. You said you want to impeach Biden, file articles of impeachments against Biden. On what grounds exactly?
Yeah, there are two main vectors. So the southern border, he said that, people should rush the southern border and come to America. He created an immigration crisis. His one sworn duty is to protect the American people. He failed on that by creating that crisis. The second vector is the Afghanistan debacle. He left Americans on the field of battle. He's derelict in his duties. Those are two main vectors for impeachment right there. I'd like to go after Kamala Harris after that for funding the Antifa and BLM riots of 2020 when she was a sitting senator.
Okay. Look, it's a lot to unpack there, because you're going yard on basically the two highest power positions we have in our country. Do you think that's a positive way to start off, especially with the last administration, with everybody trying to impeach Trump every 10 seconds? You probably can't get it. So what's the use of filing?
Well, it depends, right? That's not necessarily true. It depends on the composition of that. It appears as though they will have the ability to impeach because the House will almost assuredly be majority Republican, probably somewhere around 55% Republican if things go the way they're going now. We'll see with the Senate maybe. But even if it's 50 to 48, technically, I believe. I think it's an up or down vote in the Senate. It's not 60. It's not a supermajority there. To convict of impeachment. I think the problem is the Senate parliamentarian and what constitutes an impeachable offense, right? I mean, that's always the tough part, I guess.
But aren't we setting a bad precedent by saying? Aren't we setting a bad precedent by trying to impeach every president just because of what party they're in? I realize shit has been fucked up, but by doing this for every single president, I think that's just going to keep going over and over and over again. And chances are, with an impeachment and how long it takes, the clock will have run out on Biden at that point, if the clock doesn't run out on him in real life.
Well, two things. We're impeaching him for real offenses. I mean, leaving the southern border open, forcing this immigration crisis, that's allowed massive amounts of crime, drug trafficking, human trafficking, done real damage to America. That's an impeachable offense. And so is Afghanistan. The second thing is the impeachments will continue. The Democrats will continue to do this. They impeached Trump over a phone call that we now know was pretty justified considering the contents of Hunter Biden's laptop. There was real corruption there that Joe Biden was a part of as a vice president. So they impeached Trump for that. They tried to impeach Trump again for January 6th. Anytime we get a Republican in office, they will go for their throats. They threw Marjorie Taylor Greene off of her committees before she had even been in Congress for a month. They just threw Paul Gosar off of his committees. We can't play nice if they're not playing nice back with us. We are in very many ways in a war, and we have to show strength. Otherwise, we're going to continue to get walked all over.
Didn't Marjorie Taylor Greene say something about like space lasers that Jews were using to create
She
forest
just
fires?
got banned from Twitter yesterday, by the way, and
that's for something
Facebook
else.
today.
I actually thought the stuff that I don't follow her on Twitter, but I see a lot of her shit in my feed. I don't think it was any thing to get banned for.
Both the CDC chart.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it was anything to get banned for. That was just big tech doing big tech shit. But she said some pretty fucking stupid shit.
Oh, yeah, over the years? Yeah.
Well, over the year.
Yeah. Before she got in, though, she was pretty vocal. You're also against big tech as well. I'm looking at your Twitter feed as we speak. Do you have any plans to try to introduce bills to break up big tech?
I think we have to use antitrust laws, and I think we have to seize big tech's physical assets and declare them a common carrier. The discussions of Section 230, I think, don't go far enough. I think they're a bit outdated. Big tech is ubiquitous in everyone's lives. We've never had a monopoly of this scale, and everyone needs fair access to it. So I think using them as a common carrier and a public utility is absolutely essential.
Yeah, I've been talking about that for going on 4 years now. The common carrier thing is the only real shot you've got, right? Because even the antitrust stuff, the federal government's been trying to use this since the mid-'90s against Bill Gates. It's not going to work. They have more money than you can find them for, frankly. Like Bill Gates, they were finding him $1 million a day. And he was like, all right, cool. I'll run out of money in 2,500 years. Good luck.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's it. The sign of good legislation is that it's clear and concise and enforceable, right? It's got to have teeth. Like it has to hurt. Like the seizing assets, maybe that works. I don't know. Now that all these people it's interesting to see all these big tech companies move to Texas where they can be literally sued for political discrimination now. That's very bizarre to me. I don't know if they're counting on that getting appealed at the federal level and getting overturned or what, but it's interesting. Amazon's moving there too.
Yeah, right? Florida is doing the same thing, by the way, with their laws as well.
That fucking big plant or whatever the fuck that was supposed to be in that AOC fucked up for her people is coming here now.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Congratulations. Yeah. Congratulations. By the way, Joe, you're the second person we've had on who is running against a candidate in a primary that is voted for impeachment. Because there's what, 10, right, I believe?
Yeah, there's 10. A couple of them have already dropped out, though. So there's just 7 of us now.
Yeah. Tell everybody who you're going against in the primary and where at. I know you're out of Washington. I don't know District 3, but share that with the audience and let them know if they are in the area, how and when they can vote for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm running against Jamie Herrera Butler. By the time we get rid of her, she'll be a 12-year Republican. She basically has a worse voting record than Liz Cheney. Every single key issue we've needed a Republican to fight on, from building the Southern Wall to deploying the National Guard to quell a lot of the Antifa BLM violence that we've had out here, to repealing Obamacare, to continuing endless wars. She has voted for with the Democrats every single time, or with the Liz Cheney wing of the Republican Party. The impeachment and certification was just the last straw. Washington 3, we are just to the north of Portland, Oregon. So we're in Southwest Washington, right along the Oregon-Washington border in the Columbia River. We're significant because we are one of 2 red districts that actually touches the Pacific Ocean in the continental United States. There's another one down in California, but that's it. And we're right between Portland and Seattle. And so we are greatly affected not only by our activist governor, Jay Inslee, who Jamie Herrera Butler praises for his COVID lockdown policies, but we're also really affected by the failing cities to our north, Seattle and Olympia, and then Portland to our south.
Is that a political strategy because of where you guys live, that she's possibly siding with very democratic issues? Because we found the same thing with Adam Kinzinger and the things that he was saying, on national TV. Once his district changed, and now there's more Democrats in his district.
Adam Kinzinger's problem is that all of his political influence and ends are through his wife, who is a Democrat that worked for Mayorkas at immigration. That's why, honestly. That's not a secret. You can see who his wife is on his fucking LinkedIn page.
Sure.
You know what I mean? She is a very well-connected player in Democratic politics in D.C., and that's where his future is. So he's just thinking about himself.
Yeah, and that's where I'm going with this. Is she just thinking about herself, or are these her genuine views, do you think, in your opinion?
I think it's polling. Jordan Peterson has been talking about this a lot lately. A lot of these Canadian politicians, particularly in Ontario, are making decisions based on public polls through legacy media outlets and shit like that. Like people they try to gauge the level of fear and set the boundaries there. And you can see it in the CDC too, right? The 6-foot rule, they made that shit up, right? The 10-day fucking, if you're asymptomatic 10 days, you can go back. They switched it to 5.
Yeah.
And they said they switched it to 5 because they thought people would be okay with that.
Yeah.
That's not fucking science, bro. But I think that's what this, a lot of people, I've worked on political campaigns. They do that shit all the time. They'll spend $35,000 on a poll and be like, oh, we got to do this. Like, no, dude, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah. Is that what you think it is, Joe, with this woman?
He will claim that. She will say, hey, look, we are basically our biggest urban hub is a city called Vancouver, just in the north of Portland. She'll say, hey, look, this is a very purple district. The rest of the rural community, they don't really understand. That's why I have to make all these compromises and these deals. That doesn't reflect in any of the going out and talking to people. That doesn't reflect in any of the actual polling. That doesn't reflect in how well Trump did. Really, when you look at it, she votes how Washington, D.C. and the Beltway want her to vote. It's not Republican. It's not Democrat. It's corporate. It's establishment. And all you have to do to figure that out is look through her FEC report. Look who she gets her money from. She gets her money from Big Pharma. She gets her money from Big Tech. She gets money from Johnson & Johnson. That's why she won't say anything bad about the vaccines, the vaccine mandate. She voted for the vaccine tracking database. She's getting money from international hedge funds, for God's sakes, that are, part of this massive scam that Wall Street is running on working class Americans. So I think that she will claim, hey, look, I'm in a purple district that, again, the numbers don't reflect that at all. And I have to vote this way because I want to get things for the district. Very, I would say like 20, 30 years ago, logic of how you have to go make deals in Washington, D.C. But really, I think it's all just corporatist uniparty interests.
Yeah. I mean, it's, look, let's be real. It's the Republicans that started all this shit with Citizens United back in the day. Money was deeply woven into the American political sphere for a long time, I'm sure, from the very beginning, but never like it has been in the last 15 years since Mitt Romney and his stupid bullshit. You can basically, anybody, like George Soros pumped $1 million into Gavin Newsom's recall campaign.
Right.
A dude that says it would be a great joy for him to destroy America, like a goal in his life to do that, should not be able to spend blind money on fucking politics. 270 some attorney general, district attorney, and sheriff races across the country. What the fuck, man?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that the Republican Party is afraid to lose the power that it has, which is, that's typical of anybody that has any power. And they think that if they come clean now, then they will. That's what I think.
And with you personally, Joe, looking at where funding and all this, how it comes from, because you're in it now. You're one of the few people that we actually know. I think, Graham Allen, Alex Skarlatos went through it last year. People that we actually know in real life that are in it. How bad is it behind the scenes as far as funding goes and everything else? Are you getting calls from people in other districts who say, look, I've got extra money. I'm going to ship it to your campaign because I believe in you. How exactly does that work?
I kind of have an interesting perspective because I am primarying an incumbent, and that is very taboo. And I'm also primarying an incumbent that is not fair game by the GOP. So the GOP and Kevin McCarthy, they're not going after all the impeachment voters. They're protecting a good deal of them. Liz Cheney is okay to go after because she's put herself out there so much, and her own Republican Party in Wyoming's kicked her out. The rest of them are really not that way. They're being protected. And Jamie Hura Butler claims that she has to vote like a Democrat in order to hold the seat for a Republican. So all the corporate GOP money is behind her. I got the Trump endorsement, and that came with a little bit of extra money, really to the tune of $5,000 or $10,000. I got 2 different checks from PACs, and that's kind of it. I'm not getting any super PAC donors, but I'm not getting any of the big GOP donors. I've had some individual donors come to me and say, hey, I'm a fan of Trump. I hate the fact that people voted for his impeachment, and I'll max out to your campaign. But they can only max out to me as an individual, just like any other American citizen can. So it is a race. The first thing even is, how much money are you making? They told me at the beginning of this, hey, you're going to need to make minimum $3 million to be able to take out an incumbent. And to me, I was like, well, I have no idea how to make $3 million, so I'm just going to run as hard as I possibly can and see what happens. So it's a very much a money game, but for people that are disgusted with that, and I think most Americans should be, then it's kind of on individuals to fund individual candidates, because the game that you can play, and this is how these politicians essentially get bought, is they have work to do in DC. They're very busy. Campaigning is hard. Going out and asking people for money is hard. Constantly doing media hits, it's hard. They have all these big donors that come to these politicians and say, hey, what's your stance on this issue? And if you could change it a little bit, then we could probably make your next race a lot easier. We break free from that by the Trump model. Trump went up against the GOP, and he got his initial funding start, not just by being a self-funder, but also by there just being genuine enthusiasm for him. Matt Gaetz is doing the same thing right now. He's basically said he doesn't want any super PAC money, and he's running off of all small contributions. Marjorie Taylor Greene, when she got kicked off of her committees, she made about $3 million on, I think, individual contributions. You can look up how much she made. It set some sort of a record because she went over to Bannon's war room and said, hey, they kicked me off. I'm going to keep being vocal, and here's what I'm doing. If you want to help me break free from all the PAC money, then fund me. So I think there is that corporate greed part there, but we can break free from that with individual contributions.
Is it true that you had to go to Mar-a-Lago like everybody else to kiss the ring of Trump? Because that's the rumor that's going around. Every candidate that wants his endorsement has got to go down and see him and chat with him. And some of them are depending upon funding. I know that from behind the scenes of like, does this candidate have enough funding that I will actually support, that actually has a chance to win? Because let's face it, a lot of these races come down to money. Did you have to go down and see Trump to get his endorsement?
It's a little different. I have met Trump a few times. Obviously, like for those who don't know my backstory, my wife was killed fighting ISIS in Syria. So I met Trump at Dover after that happened, developed a relationship with him and some people in his inner circle, was offered a job in that second Trump administration. So I had met him and I had interviewed for a job before. When I announced my candidacy, I requested to go see him. So I made the request on that one. So I did go see him and I said, hey, here's what I'm doing. I'm going after this lady because I don't see a plan from the local party to do it. So I'm just going to run as hard as I can. What do you think? And he said, hey, my gut instinct is to endorse you. However, I was going to hire you for something completely different. So I trust you, but I want to see that you can stand alone as a politician. He said, show me polling and show me fundraising. And I said, okay, like let's get after the races. So all spring and all summer, worked as hard as I could. We put up a significant amount of money, made some progress in the polls, and by September, that was enough to earn his vote. So he just called me one day in September and said, hey, I saw your polling, I saw your fundraising, I'm going to make the endorsement.
What's your polling looking like now?
It's looking really good. So we got polling in right in September, October, right after the 21 nonpartisan races, after Virginia flipped the governor's house. Mm-hmm. We got polling in from Trafalgar, and that's the same group that called Trump's victory in 2016. They called both Virginia and New Jersey down to a tenth of a point in this last one in 21. So that has me in first place. It has a Democrat in second place, and then the incumbent, Jamie Herrera Butler, in third. We have a jungle primary system, so it's top two vote getters, regardless of party, advance to the general. So right now, according to the most accurate polling from Trafalgar, Jamie wouldn't even advance to the general election. The cool thing about the Trafalgar poll, too, they got a bunch of different crosstabs they've published. The last crosstab they published was 47% of people that were polled that put me in first place self-identified as Democrats. So we've got some other good numbers back too from Republican internal polling that has me at 41%, has Jamie not even breaking 30, and every other Republican candidate in the single digits.
I think you're going to see quite a bit of that in 22, to be honest. I think you're going to see quite a bit of not just independent, in any election year, particularly in midterm elections, you'll see independents go one way or the other depending on how things are going. Mm-hmm. Like if it's a president that's unpopular, independents usually go in the other direction and so on. I think you're going to see quite a few people who are Democrats vote for Republican candidates, right? And we'll see how it goes, whether they're the TDS issues keep them from voting for certain people here and there. But I think you're going to see quite a bit of that. And I honestly, other than lockdowns and all this other shit, and the fact that Biden has some weird White House set up, mm-hmm. and why is he not at the fucking White House?
I don't know.
Why isn't he doing that at the White House? Why did they build a set that looks like it? And then they put now they've added to the set, there's a crowd in the back in the windows of the set.
Yeah.
You can just go to the fucking White House and there will be a crowd out there, bro.
Yeah.
You don't have to make this all up. It's very Wag the Dog feeling right now. If you've not seen the movie, I recommend going to watch it.
It's wild. Yeah. I can't get over it. Real quick, we get one of our listeners is asking, Jack, does Joe support the proclamations in Washington?
The proclamation, again, is he talking about the mandates?
Yeah, he's got proclamations in quotes here. So I'm guessing it's probably the mandates, and my guess is probably no.
I think he's referring to Jay. So Jay Inslee, for those who don't know, our governor, he is worse than Andrew Cuomo. He just doesn't get as much press. So he basically got ahead of Biden's federal vaccine mandates and declared that all state employees have to get vaxxed in September. So I'm 100% against those. Day one that I am in Congress, I'm going to present legislation that makes vaccine and mask mandates 100% illegal. I'm going to present legislation to get all the federal workers, especially the military members that got kicked out because of the vaccine mandates, get their jobs back or make them whole. So I'm 100% against that. I think we need to cut off all the federal funding for these COVID mandates right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are losing their jobs. In Canada, they've actually started bringing back registered nurses who were fired because they refused to get vaccinated to work. Unfortunately, most of those people have gone on to new careers already and are not available, so they're facing the same issues that New York is, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
I don't know what they thought was going to happen, that those people were just sitting at home waiting for the government to come fix them. That's why they left in the first place, because they don't do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Boy, there's so many problems that we have now in America. I mean, like one of them is jobs. People just don't want to work anymore, it feels like. My opinion is this, and I'm curious yours. Once people got a taste of what unemployment was actually like, they had not been on it before, and they were like, now that I have this, why should I go back to that shitty job that I didn't like anymore? What do you propose to do to change that attitude just overall in America that we're going through?
Yeah, we're going to need to have a cultural shift, but I think a lot of that starts with a lot of people that didn't want to go back to their jobs is because they were getting paid increasingly less and less. Inflation was running rampant. Everything was more expensive. We had a brief reprieve in between 2017 and 2020 before COVID hit, when working class wages were starting to go up. But what I think we need to do is we need to start bringing back a lot of our manufacturing, everything that we've outsourced, all these jobs that people actually get to build things and become part of a community and stay in one job because they can actually support their family on. We need to bring those back. That was the world that our grandparents created, our grandparents grew up in. And it was all shipped overseas, not by like some force of nature, but by human agency. That's what shipped all that over there and took away a lot of the ability for people to not just support a family on one income, but actually be able to have some pride in their workmanship. And I think we're going to have to, it's going to be a cultural shift, but I think we need to have a national program and just tell people, look, we made some major mistakes with globalization. We are now really deeply intertwined with the Chinese Communist Party, they're actually evil. They're doing horrible things to their own people, but they also have very nefarious intent by controlling all of our supply lines. So our patriotic mission, just like our grandparents had a patriotic mission when they rallied together to fight for World War II and to fight for world freedom, our mission now is to bring back all these industries, become self-sufficient here in the United States, and take pride in that. And that's not going to be something that we can just flip a switch on. It's going to happen overnight. But I think that's something that both parties have to come to an agreement on, or if both parties can't come to an agreement on, the parties have to be supplanted by a populist movement. And I think we've started to see the underlyings of that. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that bubble up in 22. But it's going to be a project. It has to be a national renewal of not just resources, but also of national spirit.
Yeah, because I mean, you're going to have to win Congress, you're going to have to win Senate, and then you're going to have to win the presidency in 2024. Dan has predicted numerous times, and I agree with him over the last few months, that we will probably win back Congress here in the fall. I can't believe we're saying in the fall already because we're in 2022. It's crazy. Congress in the fall, potentially Senate. Back to Dan's earlier question about the presidency. Now that's up in the air. Since you did get to talk to Trump, did you ask him if he was going to run?
didn't personally ask him, but I got to tell you, the guy looks like he's reverse aging. So I know he says he doesn't like work out too much, but he looked like he had lost weight, looked younger. I mean, I saw him. I spoke with him one-on-one about my race, about everything from my late wife getting killed all the way to foreign policy. And then I saw him later that night at a fundraising dinner where he spoke off the cuff for an hour and a half. Vintage Trump, talking about, past events, talking about current events, talking to people in the crowd. He stayed and shook hands and took selfies probably for another hour until the Secret Service whisked him out of there. So I think as long as his health and his momentum maintains, I think he'll run again. I don't have any kind of insider knowledge to know that, but that's just the general feeling I got.
I do. I believe the same. I said that a few episodes ago. Just simply on branding alone and what everybody's gone through during the Biden administration so far, I don't see that letting up. And, if you're building fake sets at your own house and everything else, God knows what kind of health he's in. And I mean, for real. And I see him running again. Who would it be from the Democratic side then?
Man, I don't know. That's a really good question, because what do they do? Like, obviously they have an out with Joe Biden. They can say, look, he's not well enough. He's just going to retire because he's that age. But then what do you do with Kamala Harris? Does she just stay as the vice president? You put somebody else in there. I still think Michelle Obama could be a powerhouse if she wanted to. I don't personally care for Michelle Obama. I don't care for the policies of the Obama administration, but Michelle Obama would be a player. I mean, I think a lot of people really like her. She's a great communicator. She would be a very formidable person to go up against. So other than that, it's kind of up in the air. I know Buttigieg and some of these other guys that kind of got their butts kicked in 2020, like they think that they're going to run, but I just don't see them as being viable. I think they're going to have to pick somebody new.
I agree. And, I know you've posted about Joe Rogan a few times on your Twitter feed. Rogan actually said the other day that he thinks Michelle Obama, if she ran, would win in 2024.
Yeah.
I hate to agree with it, but I think the same thing. And I think the office of president has almost become a popularity contest. And just based on the number of books she sold, people love her out there. And that would be a tough candidate to beat. Your thoughts, Dan?
I don't give a fuck about any of those people, to be honest. I would prefer that things aren't the way they are, but they are, right? Mm-hmm. I don't particularly care for Trump. I think he's just loud for the sake of being loud most of the time. But certainly is a better option than the current guy, right? I mean, there's no question about that. Just and efficacy, right? I mean, the border situation, our foreign policy was better. Just pretty much everything was better, except for he was kind of mean.
Mean tweets, yeah.
I think, honestly, we could have done without, frankly. I mean, if he comes back and he keeps his fucking mouth shut and just does his job, that would be great. I'd be fine with that. As far as Michelle Obama, I don't think she can win.
Why not?
Why would anybody take her seriously? She's never held any political office. She hasn't had a real job in like 30 years.
One could say the same thing about Trump in 2016, though. Never held a political office. I think it's pretty much become a popularity contest.
Trump is very wealthy from running a business forever. Now, how well he ran his businesses is a matter of debate, I suppose, but he ran an actual business for decades. She's rich from political money and book money. That's not the same thing, in my opinion.
Right.
And once you get down to the heart of actual issues and she has to start talking about things, I think it's going to be a problem. Although if they ran against each other, Trump is in some trouble because he can't talk to her the same way he talked to Hillary Clinton for sure, or
Correct.
Joe Biden.
Yeah.
There's no way, because that will be seen in a certain kind of way. Right?
Which way is
Trump
that,
would ultimately? I think Trump would ultimately prevail, but I think Michelle Obama would be she'd be the biggest challenge. She's like the worst case scenario. I'm a Trump guy. I want Trump to win. I think he's going to win again in 2024. Michelle Obama would probably be the biggest problem. But I do think she's kind of unelectable at the end of the day, but it would be tough. She could, if she wanted to, she could put up quite the fight.
I don't think she wants that, because if so, she would have laid the groundwork for that already.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Like Hillary Clinton did running for Senate. You know what I mean? I just don't think she's into it. Somebody in the chat here, the wife of I'll skip it. But do you know Colonel Ray from 1st Special Forces Group?
I know who he is. Yeah.
You're familiar with that guy. So you know that he is a drunk piece of shit that beats the fuck out of his wife and got unceremoniously retired with all of his fucking benefits.
With everything.
Yeah.
We've got But yet the Marine Colonel Schiller, who called for accountability after our debacle in Afghanistan, we drugged that guy. He got drugged through the ringer. He was absolutely villainized. He got finally put out of the military. Thank God they're leaving him alone. But then you have Colonel Ray is just there's a laundry list of these guys like Colonel Ray who get drunk, beat their wives up. What's a hostage situation? And then he's like, oh no, but I have PTSD because I was a lieutenant colonel and sitting in a jock somewhere in Afghanistan. Like the hypocrisy is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's weird. We've got a big problem with the military, and just to reinforce for those who don't know, you were a special forces operator for some time as well, right?
Green Beret.
Yes, I was. Yeah. So 20 years. Yeah, started out in Ranger Battalion, then went to Special Forces Green Berets. Yeah.
And you were in first group the whole time?
I was actually a 5th group guy, and then I did some time at a Joint Special Operations unit before I retired. And then I was a CIA paramilitary guy for a year. That was gonna be my second career, but then my wife got killed, and then moved back here.
Yep. So again, I have been on this kind of rant lately. I really think that it's time for people to leave the U.S. military. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. I think there's enough of us around that understand how to fight, that know the equipment and blah, 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 in case the actual homeland gets invaded or some shit like that. But we haven't fought a war that mattered in 75 years, not one that was honorable at least. And why I question why brave men and women, right, some of the best, smartest, and most athletic among us, so like the top DNA people, are continuously. I understand there's a genetic urge in a lot of us, myself included, to serve whatever capacity that happens to be in, whether it's the military or something else. But at some point, you have to stop putting quarters into the machine and where the gumball doesn't come out. You know what I mean? Like at some point, you have to look at this device and say, this is broken. You're not going to get one more drop of sweat or blood from me. I wonder, I think about things like this a lot, like abstaining from things, like a nationwide tax strike, for example, things like that. I know some of it's difficult, but one thing you can do is not do something. Like you can not re-up. You can not join the fucking military and go fight some stupid fucking war to make Dick Cheney richer, right, for example. I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
What the military is being treated right now, the way the Afghan debacle was handled, especially the way that those 13 service members were pushed out there into the crowd, I think disregarding a lot of our known security procedures just to bring in unvetted Afghan refugees. And then we left Americans on the field of battle there. And then they got home and they were either called white supremacists, or they were told they have to take the vaccine, or they're going to get kicked out of the military. So right now, with this current regime, I get it. And this is like one of the hardest things I've had to tell people, because people will come and say, hey, you spent 20 years in the military. I've always wanted to be a Green Beret. I've always wanted to be a SEAL. I've always wanted to be a fighter pilot. But what do you think I should do next? And I'm like, man, right now, I think you shouldn't join, because they're treating our service members absolutely horribly. The same can be said during the Bush years. I think 9/11 really just blunted a lot of the truth, because all of us really wanted to believe that, hey, our country got attacked. We have to be over in these places. I think by the latter Bush years, we saw that, but that momentum had just built to such a level. But we have so much more clarity now. What I want to do is I want to be able to have enough accountability for all those that lied to the American people, and exploited, like you said, the best and brightest amongst us, exploited us in these endeavors overseas that really had nothing to do with securing the homeland. I want accountability for that, so that these institutions, like, we have to have a military. We do. The world's just a dangerous place. We have to have a strong military if we're going to be able to defend ourselves. If we're going to be able to project any kind of power, we have to have it. But it has to be something that serves the American people, not just these corporate interests, not just making Dick Cheney and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin and Raytheon, richer. So I think the need for accountability, we have to have an Afghan War Commission or a whole global war on terror more commissions and really ferret out all the lies, where all the personal gain was, and actually hold people accountable. But if we don't do that, then actually I would agree with you. Before we say, hey, stop joining the military or get out right now, I would like the opportunity to have some unconventional politicians come in there and say, hey, let's account for this. Let's hold these people accountable. The only good that can come out of the way that we left Afghanistan was that it was horrible enough that all the Americans that had really kind of gotten numb to the war and stopped paying attention to it, it was put right up in their face. And so now we have that national momentum that I think we can say, hey, we're going back. We're going to account for this, and we're going to continue to work our way backwards through all the lies and hold people accountable.
Well, we're going to be working backwards through the 1950s and the Korean War, right? I mean, that's a long list. As a matter of fact, we'd be working through the late 40s in Operation Paperclip when we decided that prosecuting Nazis came second to going to the moon.
Right.
Right.
I think the global war on terror is the most realistic. I agree with you. We could go back that far, but as far as holding people accountable that are still around, we can track down the actual financial records and all that. I think the GWAT would be a good place to do it.
Yeah, I think it's it should be no surprise to people that George W. Bush and the Obamas are on good speaking terms, right? Those people are
right. Exactly.
They could not be, at least the public facing version of them couldn't be more ideologically opposed. And I'm not saying you should be an enemy with anybody you disagree with politically, but you definitely shouldn't be palling around with somebody who is ideologically opposed to you. I think that seems like it's tug of war ultimately, and you can disagree on how to get there. Like I think a lot of more than they would want to admit, populist Republicans or populist conservatives or libertarians agree with 85%, or not maybe 85%, but they agree with what Bernie Sanders says all the way up to a point. They just disagree on how to solve the problem. They agree, like you were talking about middle class and working families earlier, and wage stagnation and all this other bullshit. That is a problem that has been identified by Bernie Sanders for the last 20 years, and one that conservative populists have been bitching about for the last 60 years. You know what I mean? And it's one he thinks that you just raise the minimum wage to $15. Which is fucking stupid because it creates inflation. And I personally think that the alternative to that is to leave people the fuck alone, right? Bring back manufacturing jobs, things like that. Give people the opportunity to actually create something. But up to that point of the actual solution, people agree in identifying the problem. And that's what politics is. It's putting everything through a filter, finding all the problems, right? Mm-hmm. Identifying them and agreeing on what the problem is, and then trying to have a debate and run some tests on what the best solution might be. That's what this is all supposed to be.
But the biggest issue is financially, how do you fix it all? And that's where the disagreement comes in. Because in all of these bills, even the Build Back Better thing with Manchin, who shot that down, he was unhappy with other things that were hidden in these bills that had nothing to do with the Build Back Better system. How do we stop that and prevent that? I mean, even in the COVID relief bill, wasn't there something about aliens in there?
There's a lot of stuff. I think it was 25% of the COVID relief bill went to actual COVID services.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the rest of it went
it's just nonsense pork. I mean, it's typical Washington shit, except for this time, it's weird. That would be like FEMA dollars, natural disaster dollars going to like something weird, right?
Yeah.
Like it's one thing to have pork in a spending bill in the National Defense Authorization Act or something like that. It's another thing altogether to have a bill that's in response to a pandemic, and 75% of that money just goes into the ether somewhere. Mm-hmm. Very bizarre to me, at least. I don't know.
I think the first step we can take towards that is getting rid of this omnibus system. Like the way that we pass legislation right now is ridiculous. I mean, the elected officials, they get a phone book dropped on their desk maybe 24 hours before, or maybe the night before. That's 3,000 to 5,000 pages long. And then they get told by the party conference, like how to vote, because they said, hey man, on page 364, there's the 2 line items that you need for your district. So you got to vote for the other, 5,000 pages. And it's just a completely ridiculous way to do business. And that's where all the pork and all the special interests, they get their cut, they get their chops on the bill. So I think for the vast majority of our legislation, it has to just be a few pages long that says this is a bill that does this, and this is how much it's going to cost. And any person with a, middle school to high school education could read the bill and have a pretty good idea of what the bill does and how much it costs. I'm a big fan of just saying no to legislation. Like if you get a phone book dropped on your desk and they're like, hey man, I need you to vote on this thing. You're like, I have no idea what's in there. You could have put all kinds of horrible things in there. We saw that with the National Defense Authorization Act. There's a bunch of Republicans, I think, that got kind of bamboozled into voting for red flag laws, firearms red flag laws that are complete and totally against everything conservatives stand for, that are against really our constitutional rights. And then same thing with drafting our daughters. That was wrapped up into the NDAA. And you had a bunch of Republicans that came out and said, like, I didn't know that was in there. Luckily, they took all that out once it hit the Senate. But I mean, that's just one tiny example. Other than that, I think one of the big reasons why we're in the financial situation we're in right now with the debt goes back to these omnibus packages, the way we pass legislation. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. And these bills too, by the way, to your point about how long they are and how long it would take to read, the Build Back Better one was 2,468 pages.
Read it.
Who has time to read it? Not one person. No.
That's double. They doubled up Tolstoy on that one, I think. You don't want to go fucking double War and Peace on a bill, probably. I think Congress probably feels like it needs to accomplish things. You know what I mean? That's so weird to me that that's the standard for a good 2-year term, is that I've put forth this amount of legislation or co-authored this amount and voted this way on, like, why? Your job is to keep the country running, right?
Which is a company. It's a business.
Like a board of directors, essentially. And if in our company, if our board of directors just started making changes just to make changes because they think that's their job, then I would fire all of them, right? And then burn the building to the ground, probably, right?
Probably, because you're Dan Holloway.
That's just for fun.
Yeah.
But that's not what it means to be a good legislator. Yeah, your job is to pass laws. Certainly that is the case. But the fucking bat boy's job is to pick up bats. But if there's no game that day, then he still get paid. It's fine.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to go out there and pick up imaginary bats just to say you did your fucking job, asshole. It doesn't make any sense.
Does that make you nervous going in? Like, if you were to win and then somebody drops a 2,468-page bill on your desk and they're like, hey, we need you to vote on this in 48 hours.
Vote no.
Yeah, does that make you nervous at all going into this? Because you hear the horror stories, but we don't actually have any real friends who have been in it, who are real friends, right? With somebody like you who we actually know, what do you do in a situation like that?
So I've told people here in the district, I'm like, you're going to hear me say no a lot. And like, maybe there were some like really great parts of that 3,000, 2,000 page bill, but there's no reason why I couldn't say no to the 2,000 page one and then just pull out the good parts and present them later. So I've told people, look, I'm going to go there. I'm going to be a freshman. I'm going to have the bully pulpit. I'm going to be able to have a voice in the dialogue at the national level, but I'm probably going to vote a lot. I think these people like Jamie Herrera Butler, who I'm going after, they get told by the GOP conference when they get there. It's the same with the DNC too, with the Democrats. Hey, you're a freshman, you do your time. We'll tell you how to vote. We'll also make sure that you're funded to get reelected. Now, again, me, primary and incumbent, no one's put any of that money in for me. I mean, I've just had individual contributions. So I'm really, if I pull this off, I'm going to be beholden to no one. So when they drop that phone book on my desk and they say, hey man, you need to vote for this, the answer is going to be no, because I don't want to have to explain that phone book back to my constituents why there was red flag laws or some other garbage in there. I'd much rather come back to my constituents and say, hey guys, this is ridiculous. They dropped a phone book on my desk, so I voted no. And I think your average person is going to go like, yeah, actually that makes sense.
Okay. And when is your primary exactly? Is it March or April?
It's August. We have ours very late. So we unfortunately in Washington State do mail out voting. We've been doing it now for about 15 years. So people will start getting their ballots at the end of July. And then election day is August 3rd. And then we roll right into the general in November.
Why so late?
Washington State does all kinds of goofy stuff. We have a late primary that basically the primary is really the real fight. Because the general happens like right afterwards and people are already kind of burned out by that point, I think, of hearing politicians talk. But, it's late. We do mail out votes, mail out ballots, and then we have this jungle primary thing where the top two, no matter what party. So we don't even register to vote as Republicans or Democrats. Everybody's the same. And so whoever gets the top two vote getters, regardless of party, move on to the general.
Really? Because, I mean, for me, hearing that it's August, it gives you zero time to prepare for the Democratic candidate who you're up against. How many Democrats are running?
So far, only one's declared.
Okay. And is there expected to be more, or is it just that one? And look, if there is just one, at least that plays into a little bit of an advantage because, look, if you're looking at August 3rd, you've got essentially 3 months left until the actual vote itself.
Yeah. So I'm not sure what the Democrats are going to do. They've lost a lot of money trying to flip this district. And they haven't been successful so far. So if they want to expend the resources to do it, the Democrat that I'm up against, he also is kind of a grassroots guy. He's not getting, I don't think as of right now, he's not, I'll check his FEC report when they come out here on the 15th, but he's not getting any big backing from Democrat donors. He's doing the same thing I'm doing, just going out and trying to speak to people to get support. So I'm not sure what the Democrats are going to do. It'll be interesting to see. I know they're probably doing internal polling right now to see if this is worth it. We had some minor changes with redistricting that actually made us deeper red, and actually they moved us up on the Trump scale, according to the Washington Post. Mm-hmm. So they may just kind of cut their losses and let the Republicans have their own internal knife fight, which is right what we're doing right now, GOP versus America first.
Yeah. My God, man, you're in it. I mean, you're absolutely in it right now.
I like how apparently, like America First has somehow in legacy media become synonymous with America only, right? And that's not at all what it means.
No,
it means America First.
Yeah.
That's not the same thing. And I know that might be like a fucking banal distinction to people who don't know how to read and shit, but first means first, and only means exclusive.
Yeah.
Right, we still help all sorts of other people. As a matter of fact, I'd say this all the time on the show. The American taxpayer, not through taxes but through private donations, are the most generous group of people on earth. That's not a federalized government somewhere. So we help people quite a bit. It's part of the culture to help people, and it brings me back to. Some of the other stupid shit that's happening. Like everybody follows one thing or another, but one of the big referendums that happened recently was with education in Virginia, right? You're a school choice guy, and I think that's going to become a phrase that a lot of people are going to become familiar with over the next couple of months.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely key. I mean, what's going on in the schools with Washington State, before you even get into any of the critical race theory or the Planned Parenthood sex ed, Washington State, we've been strangleholded by the governor. He's barely let the kids go to school. When the kids do go to school, they have to wear masks. He's talking now about a vaccine mandate for kids, for students to go to schools. Our Board of Health is discussing that right now. So having school choice in the way for the freedom, the sovereignty for parents to say, this is not what I'm going to do with my children, I'm going to pull my children out, I think is absolutely key to giving parents control back over their own children. Because between the teachers unions and governors like Inslee, since COVID started, we've had our kids absolutely held hostage. I think they've been the most helpless and most tragic victims of everything that's happened with COVID. So school choice, giving the parents the funding they need to pull their kids out of school. In a perfect world, if I had a magic wand, I would make school choice tied to the state funding as well, so that when students got pulled out of the schools by their parents, the funding would follow them, so that the schools would actually physically feel that. As a federal legislator, I can't do that, but what I can do is I can give the parents money. If they pull their kids out, they have that freedom. They can get it from the federal government. Now, I wish there was a state solution. I think this is much more in the state's purview, but in a very blue-dominated state like Washington State, right now, I know state legislators, they want to do this, but they just can't. So from the federal perspective, I would love to come in and offer an alternative that gives parents the ability to regain that sovereignty over their own children.
Right. When you say regain that sovereignty, so New Jersey spends about $24,000 per student per year. California's about $28,000. New York somewhere in the $28,000 range. What school choice people are arguing is that public schools are bullshit, right? They're trying to box parents out from even knowing what's going on inside the classroom, which, to be honest, I think like a fucking dog park, they should have webcams and mics in every single classroom in America. Why? Yeah. Why would you not have that? There's so much abuse and so much fucked up shit that happens in there. I kind of want to see. I want to see and make sure you're doing the right thing. But the point of that is school choice people say that if I as a parent decide that school is too shitty for my child to go to, I should be able to get that money that I paid in taxes, that we collectively paid in taxes for my student for the year, and I can spend that money on their education however I see fit.
Yeah.
Not seeing the problem.
Yeah. It's a great idea.
Yeah.
It will never happen in a million years.
It'll happen in a bunch of states. It's going to happen.
You think so?
Yes. Yeah. I think probably happen in Texas. I think it's probably going to happen in Florida as well. We'll see about other places, but I definitely think those two places in particular is going to happen.
And if it's tied to the funding too, the schools will straighten up and fly right. It'll become an actual customer relationship. Because I've gone to so many school board meetings, either for my own kids, but then also since I've been running, I've been going to school board meetings throughout the district. The parents will go and they will express their grievances, and the school boards will sit there, and some will be polite, some won't. But at the end of the day, you know that the school board knows that, like, it doesn't matter. Like, if they're all getting paid no matter what, it's not a true customer relationship because the parents don't have a choice. They still have to pay their taxes. Yeah, they can pull their kids out and homeschool or send them to private school. My kids go to private school, but you know what? My taxes are the exact same. So who's the sucker? It's me.
Yeah.
If when I pulled my kids out, the money followed, the schools would come back to me and say, hey, parent, like, what did I do wrong? Right. What can we do to get your money back?
That was
like
the problem.
Any business.
That was the problem with No Child Left Behind. It assigned that value that you're talking about to test scores, like BSAP and all the stupid shit like that. And you know that all that did was teach public schools to teach just to the test, so the kids can pass the test or do well enough on the test that they get funded for the next year. If it were like what Joe's talking about, and the parent could just take their kid out and put them in a private school, for example, if there was market competition, then the public school would have to say that they realize at that point that their product isn't the happiness of the parent necessarily, although that is the result. The product is the child. And parents are going to be happy when their children are well-educated, well-behaved, like good nutrition, things like that. That's what it's not. It won't be about like, oh, you're teaching critical race theory, and that is a big issue. But it won't go past that. It's not going to be like, oh, you guys were fucking teaching this, and I don't agree with math or whatever. That's not going to happen. The kid shows up from school, like back home from school, and they're well-behaved. They've eaten well. They enjoyed their time in school. They learned some shit, and by the time they progress through the public education system, now they're getting jobs at higher rates. Right, there's more of an emphasis on careers instead of just going into the educational system and going into debt and things like that. That is the outcome that parents will pay for, and then they'll put their money back into public education. Competition is always good.
Yeah,
there's no situation where competition is not good.
It's good, and you mentioned your kids are in private school, so I've got kids. I'm fortunate enough that I enjoy the public schools here in the state of Texas, and they're pretty good. Was your decision based on how crappy the public schools were where you were at, or you were just unhappy with where the funds were going?
So my kids are pretty little, and they kind of they became of school age during COVID. And so when the public schools said that basically they're going to stay shut down, and when the kids come back, they have to keep the masks on their face, I was like, I'm not putting a mask on my kids for their education. I have a lot of issues with the Washington State curriculum as far as CRT goes. They have this crazy Planned Parenthood sex ed agenda as well. But I probably would have been, I grew up in Portland, right next to the district that I live in now, in a very liberal school system, but there was still enough like freedom of discussion that I could have my own ideas. And I'm not worried about my kids being really exposed to like left-wing-ish ideas per se. And I used to like the concept of public schools, but just the totality of it, between the fact that they're basically trying to indoctrinate children, separate them away from their parents, and then the mask thing was just a bridge too far for me. I was like, okay, I'm going to put my kids into a school where I understand that we share values with. I also had a big issue with public schools, the way they've taken out a lot of the patriotism. They've taken away the Pledge of Allegiance, honoring Veterans Day and Memorial Day. Those are big parts of my life, and I think that's key for our national fabric. And I think that's tragic that a lot of the public schools, especially the ones here in the Pacific Northwest, have done away with it. So it was really, I would say, COVID had the mask mandates not affected the kids so much. I think I probably would have left them in public school for a little bit. I might have eventually pulled them out, but that was the big deciding factor.
Yeah, Lord Farquaad in the chat here says private school isn't an option for so many families. You're right, but that's kind of what the school choice advocacy is about. It's about getting that money back and a subsidy from the government to spend towards your own education. Like however you see fit. I mean, look, we've got 40 years of data showing that homeschool kids far outpace their fucking public school counterparts, and their private school counterparts, by the way. Like homeschooled, educated children have the best education that exists, at least statistically speaking. So it's not like we're saying let's do away with and this is how it used to be, by the way. It used to be that kids learned the 3 R's, which only one of them starts with an R.
Sure.
But they used to learn the basic stuff at home, in books and things like that, and then they would go to school for like specialty shit. So kids in middle school back in the fucking 1800s were learning about advanced mathematics or farming or whatever it was they needed to learn about. And they were learning how to read and write at their house from mom. You know what I mean? So this isn't a new thing. It's not a crazy thing, and the efficacy is very clear. I just want to make all that clear. There's fucking decades of data about this shit.
Yeah, and the reason I was asking you, Joe, is where I live, fortunately, my kids don't have to go through that. Obviously it's different state to state, city to city.
Man, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even, because I live in a suburb just outside of Austin, but in Austin, I heard kids are still wearing masks and everything like that. And it's town by town, and you don't really know.
Oh, yeah, we got a letter from Kane's school last week. Oh, we're going back to school. If you're worried about, or if you haven't been vaccinated yet, you should double mask. Like, why? Why double mask?
Oh, you're going twosies now.
Yeah, like, so I need 18 fucking shots and 7 masks on my face. Like, we're done with this shit. Like, nobody believes. Isn't it so funny now how we'll talk about this more later this week, but it's so goddamn funny how now CNN is like, hey, if you lose weight, you'll probably have a better time with COVID. Like, oh yeah? Thanks, bro. We said that 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And Fauci, the CDC director, is like, oh, these masks don't actually do anything. What are you talking about? Like, what did you say? Because you've been there's a federal mandate to wear them on planes.
Yeah.
Right? People are getting arrested and banned from air travel, put it on no-fly list because of it. And you're telling me they don't even work.
Yeah.
Sweet.
That's where we are.
Let's do this. It's funny just to see how they're trying to slowly agree with shit that everybody's been saying for 2 years and pretend like it's new information. I love it, honestly. I think it's like the most gaslit period in fucking human history right now. And I like it because I'm so not gaslit that watching these people crumble under the weight of their own incompetence is really fun for me. The problem is we all get fucked in the meantime, but it is very enjoyable to watch people fail.
Yeah, and everybody in the chat, by the way, Joe is saying, look, he's saying all the right things. I hope he wins, and I hope he stands by it. Look, we know you. What else would you have to lose, I guess, at that point,
Exactly. I mean, I really put my life on the line a lot for this country. And I feel like it was a great experience for me personally. But I saw exactly what this country is kind of all about. You have an establishment that does not care about your average American. And I think that experience directly translates to so many different fields where there's a ruling class that just doesn't care. They make their wealth off our back. That failure of policy really resulted in my late wife losing her life. She'd be alive to this day had the orders of Trump been followed. As much as people don't like Trump, he was trying to get us out of a lot of these endless wars. He was right. And then the establishment couldn't stand it. They left our troops there. She and 3 others tragically lost their lives that way, just like the 13 did on the way out the door in Afghanistan. So for me, I've been on the receiving end of failed policy for quite a while, and I don't have anything else to lose. I never wanted to go into politics. I don't want to do this as a career. I want to do this to get us through this crisis period, so I can tell my kids, hey, like, there were some problems in America, but overall it was all worth it. Like, your mom lost her life fighting for this country, but this country is still something worth fighting and dying for. I want to be able to look at, young men and women and tell them, hey, join the military because we need you. Join the FBI, join the CIA, go serve your country. It's worthwhile. But right now I can't do that. And that actually breaks my heart. It actually breaks my heart, and it makes me furious because these institutions, I think, are worth having. This country's worth having. But the way that it's all just been sold down the river by this establishment, if we don't fix it and take it back from these elite technocrats, oligarchs, whatever you want to call them, then we are just really going to be yet another chain in this global conglomeration of corporations. And then we'll just be a cog in their wheel. So I think the time to fight is right now. And I don't really feel like I have much to lose, but everything to go and give to this country.
Let me ask you this. If you got in, like, you actually made it in there, would you take the time to sit down with an AOC or somebody like that and just ask why? Like, why do you believe in the things you do? And but have a genuine conversation. I think that's what people liked so much about Tulsi Gabbard, is she was able to kind of agree with different issues, or at least reach out to other people and say, well, why? Why do you think this, or why do you believe in this? Would you actually take the time to sit down with somebody like that, or somebody from the squad, and say, man, just out of curiosity, let me buy you a cup of coffee. I'd love to hear why you believe in these ideas.
I mean, there's some of them I think that are more caught up in like the theater of it all, but I do want to reach out to members of, I would say, the populist left. I mean, if I would say I'm on the populist right. I'm not establishment. The GOP is actively working against me, as much as I will define myself as a conservative. And at the same time, there's members over there on the left that I think are populist. Bernie Sanders, and I do my best on social media and when I talk to say, hey, here is where we have some populist overlap. A lot of what Bernie Sanders was saying, especially in 2016, and it'll come out every now and again. Bernie did a great job going out and backing the Kellogg's workers recently in their strike. And Bernie said, hey, there's no reason why Kellogg's is going to ship their manufacturing overseas to Mexico because they can pay them 80 cents an hour. They're screwing over American workers. And that was spot on. And I agree with it. And had I been an elected official, I would have gone out there and stood with Bernie on that one. I think there is a real big potential for us to reach out to other members of the Democrat Party, the left, whatever you want to call it, and say, hey, look, a lot of this stuff that we're fighting over, pronouns and equity and all these different made up terms, they're pro wrestling designed to distract us. And who benefits the most from that distraction? Again, it's the corporate ruling class. It's the same target. We can put our people first if we get rid of all that crap, all that noise, and focus on what's key for this country. And so, yeah, I think Tulsi did a great job of it. I'm disappointed ultimately what became of Bernie Sanders, but I would like to see, and as much as I can, help members of the populist left that want to fight for American jobs, that want to fight for immigration policies that benefit Americans. I think those are two key areas. Pretty much, if you look at 2016, the things that Bernie Sanders was saying on the stump were very similar to what Trump was saying on the stump. Bernie was saying, seal off our borders because illegal immigration is an assault on working class wages. They were saying that they both were saying these trade deals that we cut have done nothing but screw over American workers. They had a different tone when they did it. But if you look at the printed text of what they were saying, it's the same thing. A lot of that got diluted later because I think the left gets into lockstep a lot better than the right does. So Trump punched through a much more disorganized institution, and he has a much stronger force of character than Bernie does. But it's the same thing. I mean, and Bernie's not the only one. There's Ro Khanna. There's a couple other ones in there. Tulsi still, I think, defines herself on the left, minus what she says is usually what she says is pretty on the America First side of the aisle, I would say. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I would love to sit down with a lot of them. AOC, she had a really good post, I think about 2 weeks ago, about going after Nancy Pelosi and insider trading. I totally agree with her on that. I had a post that was very similar to hers about how the insider trading is just an absolute scam. So yeah, I would love to work on that. Shedding the parties and putting the people first, I think, is key.
By the way, you're the second person who's been on the show recently who's running for Congress in a primary that has said the GOP is against them, even though you are running as a Republican. Why? Why is that?
Well, I mean, like a lot of what Trump and the America First movement wants to do, it's hard. And it doesn't put the ruling class, it doesn't put Wall Street, it doesn't put the military-industrial complex in the driver's seat. It puts the American workers in there. People will always point at Trump's tweets, Trump's personality. The reason why such powerful institutions were aimed against Trump. Yeah, okay, he pissed off some people on Twitter, but people piss off people on Twitter every day. The reason why the FBI was going after Trump, the reason why the tech oligarchs were going after Trump is because he was upsetting the entire global balance. He wanted to bring back manufacturing to put American workers first. He wanted to seal off immigration to make sure Americans got put first. He wanted to get us out of these endless foreign wars. He wanted to properly use foreign aid and drastically scale it back. He wanted to get us out of these globalist treaties like the Paris Climate Accords. He questioned NATO. He wanted to put the American workers first. That's why they came so heavily after him. What the GOP wants to do, and it's just a really good gig, they make their corporate donors happy, and that means putting the corporations first. The corporations want cheap labor. They want the markets, the labor market to be overseas. They want endless wars. It's a boom for the military-industrial complex. They don't want these limited strikes. They don't want no boots on the ground. They want endless occupation. They want massive amounts of foreign aid because that's one of the easiest ways to take money from taxpayers, launder it overseas, and then put it back into the beltway to the lobbyists and the special interest groups. So that's what the GOP wants. The GOP wants a status quo where they have no articulated vision for the American people other than saying, we're the opposite of the Democrats. And if you don't vote for us, socialism is going to take over. And then when they get into office, they say, okay, well, we did some tax cuts and now we're going to go on Fox News and complain about, I don't know, the Democrats and not ever fight for the working people. So right now, this is the Civil War. This is the fight. I mean, I'll run and go against the Democrats all day long. I think that's fairly easy to do. Our fight right now is against the GOP, and that just is what it is. This is a civil war for the heart and soul of the GOP. The GOP money, the NRCC, they want to take down America First candidates because they want to be able to say in 22, hey guys, this whole Trump thing, it was just a flash in the pot. We need to go back to our bread and butter, and that's just corporate tax cuts. So that's the fight right now is between us and the establishment.
Well, Joe, we wish you all the best. Now's the point in the show where we get to the Drinkin' Bro of the Week. Last time you were on the show, I believe you gave it to your wife. I'm going to ask you different Drinkin' Bro of the Week, if you don't mind. Since you are in this and you're, 7-8 months out, 8 months to the day, actually, out from your primary, who is somebody in the Republican Party that has inspired you to help you become potentially the new member of Congress?
So currently, I would say it's Matt Gaetz. So Matt Gaetz has been absolutely phenomenal. He came out here and did a rally for me. Matt Gaetz has consistently stood up for his principles. He's gone against the endless wars. He's in a heavily military district there in Florida. He's advocated to get our troops out of endless wars and entanglements. He's gone up against the establishment. He had the FBI just come after him recently. He's fighting for working class jobs every day. And he's done an awesome job of just showing how you can get out there. You can be upfront. You don't need to take corporate PAC money. You can rely on hardworking people to give you a couple bucks here and there to fund your efforts. So absolutely, I'm a huge Matt Gaetz fan and supporter. So he's definitely my drinking bro from the Republican Party of the week.
I'm really curious about that guy because you got to think that if the FBI actually had anything, then they would be dragging his dick through the dirt, right? Yeah,
nothing ever really materialized from that scandal he was facing last year. I don't know how well you know him, but what do you make of that?
I mean, like Dan said, had they had anything, they would have leaked it to the media. I mean, especially look, it's a sexual allegation, whatever Me Too scenario. They couldn't even, their case was so thin, they couldn't even produce a woman's name. I mean, even when guys are accused, we always know their name. I mean, the Kavanaugh accuser, even going back to Clarence Thomas, they always found a woman that had some linkage to the person they were accusing and trying to take down. With Gaetz, they couldn't even do that. And then Gaetz and his family, they went right back after the people that tried to blackmail them. But it was all part of an extortion ring. Kind of a crazy story when you really dig into it. But they were trying to extort him. And then there's obviously someone in the Department of Justice and the FBI that played along with what at least with the narrative that those that were trying to extort him went with. And they basically tried to make it look like they were investigating Matt Gaetz when really that wasn't the truth at all. There's been other people that made those accusations against him. They've been arrested or at least investigated by the DOJ.
Yeah, that story disappeared. It was a flash in the pan and then never heard another word about it. Where can everybody find you and help donate to your campaign if they're interested? Because it can be anybody from the United States, right? It doesn't have to be Washington.
Yeah, U.S. citizen. Yeah. As long as you're a U.S. citizen, you can donate. So joekentforcongress.com is the place to do that. There's also links to all my social media. If you're in the district, there's an events tab. You can come see us at any of the events. We do pretty much 2 events a week throughout the district. So and they're all town hall style, so you can come ask me questions and really interact. So joekentforcongress.com is the place to do it.
Yeah, awesome. I guess the only other question is Jared Taylor going to come up there and make some crazy ass fucking campaign?
Yeah, he directed Crenshaw's video. Do you want him to direct one of yours? And are you going to be jumping out of planes in it?
I don't know if I'm that theatrical. It's hard to compete with the Navy SEAL brand on that one. But yeah, Jared's made the offer, man. So maybe someday he'll shoot me out of a cannon or something for a campaign video.
Oh, I'm
sure. He's got all the equipment.
He's bored.
Yeah.
To be honest. So good luck with that.
Joe, thanks for being here today, man. Look, we wish you the best.
Yes.
And please come back if you're elected.
Yeah, anytime. I appreciate you guys having me on.
I mean, by the way, we'll have you back if you aren't elected, obviously. But if you are, we want to say, hey, we were a part of it. So
that's right.
We want to know the inside story of what it's really like from somebody on the inside that we actually know. The rest of these assholes, we don't know. this would be fun. So we wish you the best. For D'Anthony Holloway, I'm Ross Patterson. This is the Drinkin' Bros podcast. Good night, everyone.